Salam Sejahtera and welcome to another edition of Perception, where we discuss current issues that are daily topics of concern and discussion among multicultural Malaysians of all walks of life. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic of discussion today is Budget 2012. And to discuss this subject, we have with us Yang Berhormat Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Kuala Selangor. YB, how would you describe this Budget 2012?
Right. I would rather be gracious enough to Prime Minister Najib. If this budget is based on what is called the outcome-based budgeting, then I would have got no choice but to describe the budget as essentially a budget aimed at serving the outcomes he intends. And clearly, looking at the budget as a whole, the outcome intended by Prime Minister Najib is essentially to inject the feel-good factor. The fact remains that we are very close to an election, and he intends and he deliberately craft this budget to make everyone want good and to appease everyone, from the retiree to the school children, from the public sectors, to those in the private sectors and in informal sectors, and all. He attempted to appease them, please them, that the outcome is actually to inject that feel-good factor. So the budget, to me, in a nutshell, is an election in a nutshell.
YB, PM Najib describes his budget 2012 as a historic transformational budget. Is the public, is the rakyat justified in asking what is so transformational about this budget? And that too, a deficit budget for 14 straight years that offers mere token one-off incentives to the rakyat.
Well, he would have got to call it a transformational budget. I mean, he's got no choice. Budget is one macroeconomics instrument that should have arranged for development of the nation. But this time round, on those goodies, I think he has got it almost all right, in the sense that there were always segments of the rakyat that were missed in the last few budgets. But this time round, he felt so pleased because he has given to almost everyone. So he calls this a transformational budget. But frankly, I would have just got to call this budget, in terms of economy, giving sugar to the diabetic patient. This is not what the budget should be addressing. And I would like to elaborate why, when he calls it an outcome-based budgeting rather than the dual of crafting a budget, what is known as modified budgeting system, this which actually is just modifying numbers from the last year's budget. They add the plus and the minuses, and then you have the whole budget. But if you call it an outcome-based budgeting, you must, in a way, earlier on conduct a diagnosis, a prognosis, or would I say a diagnosis of the diseases, of the economic malaise the predicaments of our economy. Understanding that and putting and outlining or listing all those that you want to address, you want to handle, you want to overcome, you then craft a budget aim at serving that intention and that outcome. That would be truly outcome-based budgeting. But clearly, I would like to address this as we discuss this later, that I don't see this. I don't see the coherent, strategic objective and approaches in the budget to serve this outcome. And therefore, I've got no choice but to conclude it as a budget meant to inject feel-good factor.
YB, in its entirety, is PM Najib's budget 2012 pro-rakyat or pro-crony?
I would like to say and believe what he said as a budget which is pro-rakyat. But when I come to look down at it closer into the numbers, I then realize that this budgeting is actually, as I've said earlier, asymptomatic, if I may use that word. It's treating symptoms. It's not treating the disease. So it's just like someone who meet a doctor and he comes around with having headache. The headache is actually a symptom. Headache is a symptom signifying a more underlying disease. Or it could just be a headache which is a normal headache called tension headaches. This is usual. It goes off with Panadol or with other analgesics. But the headache is because you have a brain tumor. You have what is known in medicine space occupying lesions. Then you could not be treated with just Panadol or whatever other analgesic. If you have Wonsan, you have Ecoxia, whatever. So to me, looking through it and deliberating and perusing all the numbers, I cannot, in all honesty, I cannot call it a pro-rakyat budget, because as I've said earlier, it is only injecting that kind of immediate relief. And very unfortunately and extremely unfortunately, most of the goodies are one-off. Most of the goodies are one-off. And I will elaborate why. When you do not address the structural problem of the economy, you do not address some fundamental and structural problem of the economy, however you try to boost up the rakyat by giving one-off kind of goodies, they could not sustain that challenges, that predicament, that problems, high costs, rising costs of living, inflations, low incomes, So if you do not address that, much as you would like to give, it's just like giving fish to them. As soon as they finish your fish, they're looking and staring at you again for the next round of fish. And that is not sustainable, and that is not tenable, and that is, to me, irresponsible.
YB, it is an open secret that PM Najib lifted off initiatives contained in the PR Budget 2012. Could you highlight specific instances?
All right, I would be very frank. I was the chairman of the committee to draft the budget, and we met every Friday. And as soon as we have discussed, we will have a press conference. Now, right from the first round of our discussion, and immediately when we present and has it presented to the media, for almost every time, every Friday, there would be responses from the BN side. Now, I'm not against that. I mean, it's meant to cause some form of check and balance. It's meant to antagonize them. It's meant to cause some form of discourse and discussion or debate. For example, our budget is premised on helping 60% of those earning 3,000 and below. You have in our country this very rich nation with poor people. That's how I describe this country. In terms of resource per capita, we have been recognized by World Bank as one of the richest country. Resource, the entire resource divided by the 28 million population here, we are about one of the richest nation on earth. However, very unfortunately, we have got very many poor people. If on average, if 60% of those household earning 3,000 and below and 40% earning 1,500 and below, on average, you have 75% of our population earning less than 2,500 a month. Now, our target, in the sense of our strategic objective in our budget, is aimed at uplifting the income of this group. And we have got programs, specifically aimed at doing that. Now, let me tell you how they imitate this. Immediately on that occasion, the finance minister and the second finance minister instructed Dato' Idris Jala to look into how BN could help alleviate the sufferings of the 60% of those earning 3,000 and below. And he was given 2 weeks to come up with it. Now, let me just move fast forward by saying that on the occasion of that 7th October presentation of the budget 2012, I was most perplexed, so to say. I was most puzzled when Prime Minister Najib came with a 232 billion budget, reading it from a photocopy, we were given a photocopy of the budget speech. It's a photocopy of the budget speech. What does it tell you? I've got no choice but to say that, that this was not prepared well in advance. To the final day, perhaps, there was still changes. And I could, and every time, it so happened that we have got this budget of Belanjawan Pakatan Rakyat with us, all of our MPs. And as soon as he pronounced something that amounts to plagiarizing us or imitating us, we all will lift our budget and show, hey, this is Pakatan's budget. So that's how, and I can go to the specifics as to how, they imitate us, especially on the goodies. I would like to stress that they have got it wrong. Our goodies, so-called goodies, is not one-off. And I can elaborate to you the difference of this. The difference between us and them. I mean, it's not one-upmanship kind of thing. I'm not into that. You should know that better. But it's just plainly, and it is plain and clear that while ours talks about a more concerted attempt at lifting up incomes, theirs was more to relieve the rakyat out of the agony of an impending slowdown or downturn of the economy in 2012. So I think I will put it at that first, because I would like to elaborate few examples where, you know, they thought that we are giving, say for example, we're giving child care allowance of 1,000 a year for children below 12 of household earning 1,000 a month. We are giving, we are increasing our welfare payment to 550 per month. That one was really 100% imitation. They immediately increased theirs as well. You know, we have got supplement hardcore poor household income to 550 a month. There's another one. You know, we have got payment of 1,000 for qualified homemakers. That is monthly. That is monthly. And for those 1,000 for qualified household maker of household less than 18,000, 1,500 a month household income. And that is not one off. So really, and what is most important, when they revise the revamp their salary structure, we have got one which is really one that is focused on helping. For example, we have 500 ringgit teaching allowance for all teachers, and that's every month. It's not one off. Why? Because we believe that it is these teachers from all level, from the primary to the secondary to the tertiary to the training institute to the skills-based community colleges, whatnot, they need to be, you know, be given dignity in their life and livelihood, and they deserve this. Now, they didn't quite get our kind of philosophy, our kind of concept, so they came up with a revamping of the salary structures of the entire 1 for teachers. No, the entire 1.3 civil servant million civil servant, and that is very costly. But then it's okay. I mean, I mean, it's up to them. They are the government of the day. You know, they call the shot. But however, when we saw their salary structure, there's a lot of injustices, and teachers are already screaming, you know, that, you know, the 3 tiers is made into 1 tier, and it's a time-based thing, and some people get very severely compromised, while others get, you know, given inequitable kind of salary increase. So all those tours, it's really not well taught. This is not really well taught, and it looked like it was done in a rush. And the way PM Najib was reading from their photocopy version of the speech make us feel rather, you know, the word is, we feel ashamed. Sorry about that.
YB, plagiarism aside, what is the distinct difference between PM Najib's BN Budget 2012 and PR's Budget 2012? What is the distinct difference?
Right. The distinct difference I would put it this way. Is I've mentioned it earlier. PM came and presented a budget which we thought was a really, you know, a budget aimed at injecting feel-good factor. You do not see a coherent and consistent strategic approach to move forward with this reform, except for that 17 subsectors which he liberalized. Fine. But we do not see real effort in, say, addressing 1, budget deficit, 2, debt, federal government debt, 3, income inequality, 4th, leakages, delivery system, endemic, you know? 5th, over-reliance on foreign workers, low skill, hence subsequently resulting in your low skill, low value added enterprises. 6, over reliance on petroleum revenues, no no new revenue base. He was so afraid to even mention about GST, which he has been talking about, this consumption tax, this new tax revenue, new tax system, which will increase, which will enhance revenue based. But he didn't want to address that, because he wants to look good. It's all so much of window dressing, He's not willing to, so to say, bite the bullet or take the bull by the horn. Yes, we are in a situation with this spending, with the euro crisis, the American financial crisis, sovereign debt, bordering bankruptcies of European states, and even the American recovery is a far cry. I am the Prime Minister. As a Prime Minister and as well the Minister of Finance would like, in as much as I would like to help you, I must be responsible, I must be realistic in giving whatever that I could give. But at the same time, I must bear in mind that I've got 14 years of budget deficit that I must address, and I could not be spending more than I should. That should be what a truly statesman Prime Minister would do. I don't mind what the opposition have got to say, what the NGOs have got to say. I've got to do what I've got to do, because I know what is best for this country, and I can still listen to you, but I've got to decide. The buck stop at me. That should be how he should be doing it, rather than flip-flopping and to the final second still attempting at modifying his budget. So I would regard that as the most distinctive, defining criteria of our budget with them is to induce feel-good factors, which he direly in need of. But as for us, we want to be popular as well. We are a political party. At the end of the day, that's the bottom line. We have our clientele, we have got voters to take care. But we are saying to them that we are in here to cause a reform. That reform begins with political reform. With all those political reform, breaking the bottlenecks of the system, particularly structural problem, monopoly, oligopoly, distortion of the market forces, giving out to cronies what should be giving out, what should be actually be given to all that are capable and competent, on a level playing field kind of competition, and hence, giving to the best what would be, at the end of the day, best for the nation. So that's what we intend to do, and having a kind of anti, what we call as the, redressing all the lopsided concessions to utility concessionaires of tolls and IPPs, water, whatever. We will address that in a more concerted way, and reviewing all those concessionaires agreement, whatnot, that compromise the rakyat and favors the cronies. So we are in to do that, and more importantly, I would like to talk about the macroeconomic number in the next question, perhaps.
Before we go to that, YB, whilst Pakatan Rakyat is committed to realizing a minimal wage for all Malaysians, PM Najib does not deem it necessary. Public perception is that he is not sincere about addressing and alleviating the economic suffering of the masses. What is your perception?
My comment on that is simply this, that as if PM Najib is unaware, or he pretends not to be aware, or the worst case scenario, he's ignorant, and that would be disaster for us. That spells disaster. But I could say outrightly that as the PM, as the PM, he should address a structural problem here, because the World Bank recognizes us as one of the countries that are trapped in a middle income trap, and that is serious. World Bank as well, opined that, mentioned that in the last 14 years, between 1994 to 2007, if I'm mistaken, real income in the domestic sector only increased by 2.6%. Real income, meaning income that you have taken care of inflation, only 2.6%. And you compare with all the other things of daily needs, household needs. You take sugar, you take flour, you take chicken have increased more than 50% those times, and everyone, vegetable, fish, ikan kembung, whatever. So this is how I see it. A minimum wage is almost like the floor wage that is necessary for a decent, no, not so decent, for survival. A decent wage is something else. This is really floor wage that will make you survive. So once you address that, there will be an upward mobility of all others. So that's the beautiful thing about the minimum wage, and it's legally, it must be legally enforced. Although it may take some exemptions, sectors or zones or regions, states, whatever, but essentially there must be an open, undivided commitment to put this in place, because it has been put in place in many countries. And the minute you have that, then you will not have a security guard paid a basic salary of 350 a month with 3 children or 5 children, household of 6 or 7. How could you expect them to survive in a place like in the Klang Valley or in Selangor, for that matter? So this is why we thought that the minimum wage would be a structural problem, that the bottleneck that we must break its neck and releases the trap that we are in, and essentially because of the reliance on foreign unskilled laborers, particularly in the sectors of construction and plantation. So this is the reason why employers tend to like foreign workers, because every 5 years there is a turnaround, they go back, they restart, and employers, being employers, they are profit making, they maximize profit, they look at their bottom line. But we must also be, we must be friendly to business people, much as also we must be taking care of our rakyat, our citizenry. Therefore, how I see this, there's no two way about it. You don't have any more option. You just got to put it in place. Is the floor wage, bare minimum, not decent living, but survival.
YB, is it not ironic that PM Najib is always talking about transforming the nation into a high income earning entity, yet he is averse to realizing a minimum wage formulations? Can you understand what his motivation is?
I must admit that I don't quite understand his rationale. I think he is not aware. I can give him the benefit of doubt, in the sense that I don't think he understands the dynamics of this. I don't think he understands the connectivity of this. How that whole salary structure would change immediately you put the minimum wage in place. But I don't think PM Najib is aware of this. You know, the way he's saying is, I've been asking many times in the parliament. I've heard this thing called high income economy. I have not been told as to how this could be achieved. There's not one minister, let alone, you know, the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, let alone others, able to articulate how would you exactly, you know, propel into a high income economy?
Can you propel into a high income economy without first no? We talk of Barisan. If you do not address minimum wage, how do you propel into a high income economy?
As I have said that you will always be trapped in this bottleneck, because that minimum wage is about almost the floor wage. Until and unless you determine that at what level, we are proposing 1,100 per month. You know, we have seen so many modalities. We have been studying this, and we've been discussing and debating for many weeks on minimum wage. You know, we conduct seminars, you know, get the unionists to come around, get the academics, get the industrialists. Even with 1,001 actually is still on the lowest. We believe that, you know, as for a start, we begin with 1,001, you know, ringgit per month, and that is almost like rock bottom lah for us. So until and unless you get that put in place, it's quite. I'm not saying that it is irrelevant to talk about high income economy, but you are actually, there is always a downward pressure on the entire income structure when the lowest is not determined, the baseline is not determined. It's just like, you know, you got to determine the baseline before you talk about, you know, the whole other higher up in the hierarchy. So we thought that this must be addressed, and it has been long outstanding.
YB, we will take a short break now. To our respected audience, we trust you will be with us when we return to continue our discussion on Budget 2012 with Yang Berhormat Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, the Honourable Member of Parliament for Kuala Selangor. Welcome back to Perception. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic today is Budget 2012, and our guest is Yang Berhormat Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, Honourable Member of Parliament for Kuala Selangor. YB, prevailing public perception is that PM Najib has chosen to punish the middle class even before the next general election because they voted PR in the last election. The perception is based on the fact that there is very negligible incentives granted to alleviate middle income suffering. Could you care to comment?
Right, I would be very careful with that. Firstly we got to define our middle class. If that is a salary bracket of or income of more than 3,000 to 5,000 as the perhaps lower middle class, and anything above 5,000 to 7,000 income per month as the middle class, and anything beyond that would be the upper echelon of the middle class. Then, in all honesty, I did not see anything concretely proposed by this budget to alleviate any of their suffering, because beside that 1% contribution by the employers, which was meant to be those with the income below 5,000, right? Above 5,000. So that is really for the higher and it's very unfortunate why they have done that, because this group really do not require that. If anything, it is those really the lower middle class, which I sometimes believe that they form the majority of them. That would be aided or helped by this employers' contribution. But of course, that these are saving for them rather than immediate cash in hand. Corporate tax also not touched by Najib, and all those one-off are essentially meant for example, the retirees, army personnel getting 3,000, which one-off. It doesn't, does not, also relevant to them. Yeah, as a whole, I would tend to agree with you, Gilbert, that the middle class is not really favored in this budget. As to how and why they've been treated differentially this way, why they've been discriminated this way, I will not be presumptuous to say that, as you put it a bit cogently, or is meant to punish them for their siding with the opposition the last time around. I tend to agree with you, much as I wouldn't want to just be presumptuous, because these are, in all fairness, these are the most enlightened section of our society, and they are those who have got access to information. They are, to a large extent, in the Twitter jaya. They are the netizen actually, and they are the most alert and the most discerning of the rakyat. So yes, perhaps I can concur and go along with you the fact that they're not very favoured by Najib.
YB, does budget 2012 measure up to the reform pledges of PM Najib's new economic model?
If new economic model is, by new economic model, if it's meant to say of inclusivity, of competitiveness, of equality, meritocracy, and allowing for a free and fair kind of competitions, and more importantly is the inclusivity thing, I really do not see those programs loud and clear. This is what I thought. The new economic model should also be addressing, among other things, the economic malaise or the economic problems of the nation, which is essentially on leakages, corruptions, and whatnot. So I think in a nutshell, somehow the consideration of votes and what I said earlier is the injection of the feel-good factors tend to override and take precedence over solid economic reforms. So that is very unfortunate, because I could see, and I did a bit of my own calculation, it totals out to about 48 billion spent on all those feel-good factors kind of program, plus all the subsidies, in relation to the 232 billion. It's almost like a fifth. It's almost like 20% of the budget. So where in the budget would you say that you can pinpoint effective programs to enhance the new economic model's objective? It's difficult for you to discern and sort of put a finger on it. So this is what I thought. It's rather irresponsible on Najib to have crafted a budget this way, because especially when he spent and when he mentioned about his macroeconomic numbers of growth and fiscal deficit, to what has been said, 4.7 of GDP, and next year's growth to be 5 to 6%, all those is too optimistic, and at best, it's too optimistic. At worst, to me, it's irresponsible.
YB, just as the ever-increasing high cost of living, our federal debt has soared from ringgit Malaysian 242 billion in 2004 to a staggering ringgit Malaysian 456 billion in 2011. Is this drastic increase in federal debt in consonance with what PM Najib is talking about historic economic transformation?
I think you put it so lucidly, this question. But I must say, in all fairness, if we care to understand economic cycles, there are the boom and the bust, good time and bad time in simple term. And if you go back to Keynesian economics, during the boom time, you're supposed to be, saving. And because you need those saving for the bearish time or for the bust time, when you have slowdowns, when you have downturn. But very unfortunately and extremely unfortunately, for the last 14 years, ever since 1998, our government was seen to have been running deficit budget in both good times and bad times. And that is extremely deplorable, because deficit in itself is not necessarily evil, but deficit committed in the boom time, when you're not supposed to have deficit, at least you must have a balanced budget, if not a surplus budget. Because in those times, from 2003 to 2007, you have Singapore, you have Thailand, you have even Indonesia, you have Australia, running surplus budget. As for us, consecutive years, and it's going to be the 15 consecutive budget deficit year for us in 2012. Now, why is this happening? It's essentially what I call bad fiscal management. Very irresponsible. And worse still, we are relying and cannibalizing our petroleum revenue. 10 years ago, it was only 20% contribution to the entire revenue of the federal government. Now it's almost like 40%. And they are insisting that they be giving the royalty of about 30 billion a year. That is excluding the what is known as the PITA, the income tax, petroleum income tax, and as well that does not even include the dividend. So on in all, is a whooping contribution from Petronas, petroleum income. So yes, I could see that this is bad, and Pakatan's budget is committed to reduce significantly on the deficit. And this is the reason why, as opposed to them, Pakatan's budget only called for an expenditure of 180, ours is 220, while theirs is 232. With our projecting, with their projection of 5.5 growth, they have got a fiscal deficit of 4.7. Ours, based on our expenditure and using their GDP rather than our projection, we project a growth of 4.25%. They projected average, I would say, 5.5. So, as they say it, ceteris paribus, everything being equal, our deficit is 3.6% GDP, while theirs is 4.7.
YB, public perception is that Budget 2012 has a racial inclination to it, as the bulk of the one-off incentives favors the Malays over the non-Malays. Is this perception justified?
If I'm going to commit this analysis, I would only be able to say this, somehow consistent to what we have said earlier about the middle class group, the middle class segment of the rakyat and the voters. Najib is making sure that his safe deficit in the rural areas would be untouched. Meaning, when you come to identify rural areas, you know very well, Gilbert, that they are essentially Malays. Yeah. So, for all those that I've seen, most of it, is focused and on rural areas, or rather on those those segment of rakyat. And much as I hate and dislike to take a racial perspective here, if you ask me that question, has it got a racist overtone, I would dare not say it has got it. But coincidentally, you see those divide and polarize on a racial basis, because rural areas are essentially Malays, and those in more urban or suburban areas, then you have a mixed kind of constituencies. So yeah, all those programs that I remember, he put in on few millions on what is known as lonjakan, to bring development out to the rural areas. I personally feel that there's nothing wrong with that. They should have done it ages ago. Yeah, but my comment is, they got to do it consistently and see the program through, not announcing it and then once they've gotten their outcome, what they intended in the first place, then they forget about the rural areas. They need to be helped. They need to I personally feel that there should have been more help. That should have been done ages ago. Now what we have now is an imbalanced regional development, and it's very unfortunate again, because they should not have done this. They should have been giving per capita a contribution a lot more. In fact, for that matter, even the royalty, the petroleum royalty to Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, Terengganu should have been given more, because these are states that are that are lagging behind, both in infrastructures and even perhaps infrastructures. So they must be helped. They must be given their shot in the arms to make them be more capable, competent and competitive. But why they have been marginalized, and continually being marginalized. Look at Sabah, look at Sarawak, when they are contributing to the federal revenue very significantly through their oil and gas. This is something that the rakyat must open up to and question the federal government. We as the federal opposition, we will continue to check and balance the federal government.
YB, is there any indication in Budget 2012 that the poor inflow of FDI into Malaysia compared with our ASEAN neighbours has been addressed by PM Najib?
I remember when he was presenting this budget on Friday last, that he proudly announced that Malaysia has become the topmost investment destination and we received the highest FDI. He said that. And I was struggling to find what information, where is he getting it from. I did not want to dispute that. But let me say this in a nutshell, that investors are, as said, in the investment fraternity, investors are the worst coward. They will only go to a place where they can return. So what investors are looking for are returns, return of investment, that is, and the more conducive your country is, that will be in fact the attraction. The way they are giving incentives, like the Linus thing, 12 years, non-tax, no tax at all, while they're bringing all this radioactive waste, whatever. The way they are giving incentives, it's I would say, if it's not criminal, it's scandalous. Because they must be also understanding of the fact that there are environmental impact, there are collateral damages to the environment and whatnot. Much as they would like them to come, you must also evaluate the quality of investment. What kind of investment? And does it help you to, within a bigger strategy of increasing your rakyat's income? Is it something which has got higher value added enterprises? Is it knowledge based, or is it another round of construction? The bolts and nuts of what we have seen, more of the same things. So these are the issues that I thought would be pertinent to address. Okay, and I would put it at that.
YB, given based on PM Najib's extravagant deficit budget, what do you envisage are Malaysia's prospects in the immediate, medium, and long-term future in 2012?
Based on that alone, I must say that the BN government has been priming for far too long. I wouldn't imagine what we would be doing if we are the government for the last few decades. But surely we can always compare with our neighboring countries. Look at how we, once upon a time, were in the same league with South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. What did they do that was right? What do we do that were wrong? So there must be something that we can learn from them. Now, looking at it from this perspective, just our immediate neighbor down the causeway, they may be a small population, but we must remember, we have the economy of scale. We have 28 million, they a lot less. We have resources, they don't have anything. Now, what do they have? Perhaps they have the human capital. And our human capital is a far cry from what is desired to propel this nation to be one that is really competitive and at equal standing, to be within the OECD's and developed economies. So I must say that we have got it too many wrongs. We were developing, or we were spending on more of infrastructural. Even today, we're still building highways, even this monumental, skyscraping kind of building. There's too much money spent on this, while we are far behind in terms of real human resource development. 75% of our workforce, as I was told and read, have only SPM as their highest qualification. There's no two way about it, Guilford. No two way about it. We must invest in human resource, in human capital, in a big way. And that goes a long way if we are able to put right our education system. We have been flip-flopping, even though on the issue of the PPSMI, teaching of science and mathematics and English. You know, we have not had what Singapore had once upon a time when they embarked on the thinking education. The old style, traditional, very exam-oriented education. They are easily a decade ahead of us. We had the resources, we had the money. We have been spending hundreds of billions, if not trillions now, on all this. But where are we and where are they? So that, yes, your question is on that. That is only one aspect. But if we had been borrowing because we want to build our nation like others, we should have leapfrog. We should have propelled our nation to one which is, a Malaysia worthy of Malaysians. But you look at even our universities, we are struggling to be in the radar of the top league and top-notch universities. You look at our industries, our SMEs, much to be desired by way of what is known as the higher value-added industries, which are knowledge-based, which are based on R&Ds. Yeah, we keep selling commodities, basic commodities. We keep selling our oil palm, our CPOs, crude oil palm. We should be barring and banning exports of logs, export of basic commodities like this. We must only export manufactured product, high value added product. We must force our SMEs and force our industries to only export finished products like this. Only then, now I'm answering the question which they have not answered. How do you get to high income economy? You got to get high, you could only go by that road and that path if you are able to really beef up your industries to one that is exporting not basic commodities but finished manufactured good with high value income products. Only this way could you compensate for your workforce to be paid a lot higher than what they deserve now or what they are given now. So to me, and as Pakatan, we are clear about where we should be going. But unfortunately, and extremely unfortunately, that BN has been doing more of the same thing. And they talk big, high-sounding rhetoric of acronyms that many wouldn't really understand. But when it comes to analyzing key performance and deliverables, key performance indicators and real deliverables, you don't have it. And that is very unfortunate.
YB, on behalf of TV Pass, I sincerely thank you for your time and being with us on this edition of Perception.
I thank you.
To our respected audience, we thank you for being with us throughout this discussion. Wherever you may be, I wish you a pleasant weekend and a productive week ahead. On behalf of TV Pass, until we meet again next week, I wish all Malaysians Hidup Rakyat, Hidup Pakatan Rakyat.